Hello everyone.
Hello, everyone.
You good?
You good?
Please, guys,
Please, guys,
mute your
your
microphones so
microphones so
we are not
we are not
interrupted or we're
interrupted
not
or we're not
interrupting our
interrupting
speakers,
our
please.
speakers, please.
Okay, let's give it another
Let's give
minute
it
and
another minute and
we will start.
we will start.
My
My
microphone is
microphone
open.
is open.
I didn't hear that. I didn't notice.
Okay,
Okay,
I think we
I
can
think
start.
we can start.
Yep, let's begin.
So, hi
So,
everyone.
hi everyone.
It's nice to
It's
see everyone.
everyone.
Today, this is
Today,
our
this is our
first
first
webinar this
webinar
year.
this year.
So we are pleased to have
Pleased to have
Vlad
Vlad
Konov,
Konov,
lead product
lead product
manager
manager
of Unmanned
of Unmanned
Systems at
Systems
JDI
at JDI
Integrations.
Integrations.
And JDI
JDI
Integrations is our
Integrations is our
premium
premium
member.
member.
Also, as always,
As always,
we do these webinars in partnership with Danish industry and
and
Brightbird Security. And as always, we're doing the sponsor is Spirals Bank. And as always, Mark is gonna provide the latest geopolitical outlook. And we're also going to talk about the latest developments at the phone lines. There's actually positive news. We finally received, or in the process of receiving 90 billion euro loan from European Union, which will allow us to stay strong for another 2 years with, I would say, sufficient budget support and defense expenses. Okay, so I believe Mark.
Yep, sure. I'll take things over from here. Before I get into it, can I just confirm that there's no echo from my end here? So I'm seeing people writing in the chat that Andrew is echoing. No echo? Okay. All right, great. Then I will continue, assuming that's not impacting anybody else. Okay, good. So, as we titled this webinar, for this iteration, at least, are things looking up for Ukraine? And the answer is actually yes, they are, which is very, very nice to hear, because if we ask that question at most points in the past year, roughly, or even more, probably couldn't have spoken with so much optimism. But I think there are a lot of reasons. Of course, it's a difficult period, but things are largely looking up. So we should feel in a comfortable position. And I also would go so far as to say, for example, at our Q2 event in June here in Kyiv, moving into Q3, the second half of this year, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of advantages accruing further to Ukraine, both in a number of areas, which I'll get into in the presentation. So I think 2026, we have a lot to look forward to as far as the Ukrainian side of things. So for today, for the agenda, as always, we'll start off with the geopolitical and war outlook. I will mention a number of things on the security front, but I will actually intentionally leave that a little bit short in order to allow our speaker, Vlad Konov, the head of Unmanned Systems, at the end to give much more detail on that. I will also discuss the economic and business trends, and then Brightbird risk. Anders will be presenting on the security update on the battlefield and in the air and at sea. So with all of that, what has happened lately? As we usually discuss, the world is changing rapidly, so it's always worthwhile to just sort of take a step back and what has happened in the last few months of note, of importance to Ukraine, of importance to the global order. First and foremost, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's important to note. It's critical to note. Very, very good news. And this really helps Ukraine turn a corner here. And frankly, Europe and the Western order to turn a corner. I think Orban's loss in Hungary will be a historic moment in this transitioning new international order. And critically, the consequence of that, with the 90 billion euro loan, finally, you have to think after months in late 2025 of Europe deliberating on this, finally deciding to provide this 90 billion euro loan in December, and then delayed for Orban's own selfish political interests for months until finally its approval here in April 2026. Absolutely critical for Ukraine financially to continue to prosecute the war, continue to maintain macroeconomic stability this year and next year. So this really gets us into the beginning of 2028 with additional support from other donors as well, Japan, Canada, other bilateral support, IFIs, etc. This will basically give Ukraine the macroeconomic stability and sort of financial bulwark and economic bulwark that it needs to get into 2028, which secondly is a massively important signal to Russia as they're watching their economy collapse. And you're seeing Ukraine able to sustain this and continue for at least another 2 years, which is massively important in terms of almost a psychological warfare, knowing that Russia has to come up with the resources to keep going for at least another 2 years in this war of attrition. So that's important. And then lastly, another sort of underappreciated point about this is that most of this 90 billion euros is actually going to military support, going to the front, in fact, and helping domestic manufacturing, domestic defense manufacturing within Ukraine. This is critical because Ukraine has already started to take back the tech advantage, right, over the past that Russia had sort of taken last year, and in recent months, Ukraine has taken that back. Now we're going to get another injection, another stimulus of cash, which is going to not only create greater quantity of drones, so you're going to have a lot more to work with, but also higher quality of drones with Ministry of Defense contracts that were delayed for the last 3, 4, 5 months. So this will also help spur things in the coming months and obviously improve Ukraine's position. Separately from that, of course, we have Trump's war of choice, his unnecessary engagement with Iran at the end of February, beginning of March. That has continued far longer than Trump and the United States would have liked. But that has massive implications for the global security order and for, as mentioned, this transitioning, burgeoning international order that we're watching. This is really a major inflection point, really a historic moment. So, I mean, I really think in 10, 15, 20 years, they'll be talking about these months here. Orban's loss in the election, Trump's decision to engage, to militarily engage Iran. Then Zelensky, right, going to the region, actually signing these major partnerships with Saudi, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, the list goes on, and also within Europe in the last month with Germany, Norway, pre-existing ones with US, UK, a number of partners at the global level now. So we'll talk more about that. Ukraine taking back the tech, getting quick mentions of that. And then lastly, another encouraging point is that all this is going on, which is quite powerful for Ukraine, watching Russia, its worst economic and financial moments since the start of this war. I'll get into much more detail on that. And there's all social implications. Could be quite determinative for the trajectory of the war in the coming 6 to 9 months, depending on, of course, how things all play out. So, look, one of the most common questions I get from clients is, of course, where's the war in Iran going? I showed this for those of you in Kyiv at our event, and at the beginning of March, just 1 week after Trump had launched the war. I said we could talk about this for hours. Very simply, Trump is almost bound to lose because, as Sun Tzu said 2,500 years ago, and Trump's war in Iran is exactly this. It is tactics without strategy, which means it is the noise before the defeat. So this is going to be, I believe, in historical terms. Again, we're watching history in the making here. This is going to be United States' Suez Crisis, if you will. So that was the moment when the UK, in 1956, had similarly, in the middle of the Suez Canal, had a tactical victory that proved to be an absolute strategic for the British Empire and is widely end of the British Empire. Historical analogy, of course, is full center, one of the financial centers of the world, energy production, food production, etc. But I think this is a critical moment in terms of the United States' ability to influence events internationally. So foreign policy, this is a decisive break for the United States and the capabilities abroad in the same way that it was for the British Empire at that time. And then critically, I'd ask the question, which is a very interesting one. In 1956, the United States filled that security gap with the collapse of the British Empire. Who fills it now? Does China step in, actually, despite the fact that China has not taken a leadership role globally when they've had opportunities the last several years? And then this leaves an opening. By the way, Ukraine, in many ways, is filling that opening and will continue to fill that opening, I believe, in the coming years. It is highly unlikely that Trump can walk away from this war in Iran with anything approximating a potential victory. I'll say 10 to 15% likelihood of anything approaching that. So the overwhelming likelihood is that the U.S. is going to simply fail. Now, what does that actually look like? It's a little bit more difficult to talk about timelines and the actual firm result. But Trump is really setting himself up for a terrible. Things haven't been so bad in commodity. Because
Mark, your connection is terrible, and we're losing you all the time.
We know that he watches Mark.
We're losing you all the time. You're breaking up all the time, so it's really hard.
Can you hear me better now?
I mean, sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, but.
Are you losing me now? It's better then.
No, you're breaking up.
So interrupt me if it's weekend.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Let me adjust. Off of that better with the video off.
Try.
No, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it should be fine. Try. Keep on going. Try.
Yeah, can you hear me? Is this
going?
Okay. Okay, continue. Hopefully the connection improves. Trump watched believe too much, but as this war continues, now 2 months with no end in sight, markets are less believe.
Sorry, guys, we lost him. He's gonna connect in a second. Probably 1 second.
Can you hear me okay? No.
You're breaking up. You're breaking. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I will share my screen. Hopefully this works.
Can you connect to your mobile phone?
That's what I'm doing now. You hear me okay now?
Yeah, we see the screen.
Okay, I will continue. Andrew, just signal again if you're losing me. But in either case, so there's this fate that Trump is a businessman and his watching policy decisions, but that faith in Trump is clearly fading after 2 months now. So we're starting to see commodity prices, particularly oil prices, to rise a little bit more sharply just in the last week as an insight for this. So we should not expect this to be resolved anytime soon. And one of the fundamental problems related to this is the fact that unlike the previous crises that Trump started, whether it's the tariff wars, specifically the tariff war with China, the issue of Greenland, these were threats that Trump made, which then he could retract on his own and then end the panic, right, and stop the crisis. In this particular case, he expected to be able to win this war within a matter of days, and this is similar to Putin in 2022. This is something he can't control. He cannot control the Iranian regime and their retaliation. He likewise is having trouble controlling Israel, of course. How would Gulf allies continue to respond if Iran continues to launch more attacks or they keep the strait closed for months and months? So for Trump, unfortunately, he's unable to control how this plays out. Not to mention, Iran has escalation dominance, which is the fundamental problem, and that's why Trump is really stuck, and there are really no good options for him. There are frankly two options: escalate further with some maybe potentially large ground invasion in some form, which would be extremely dangerous and likely would end up to be a strategic failure, or alternatively to seek some sort of negotiated deal, which seems to be the path he's on. However, Iran is not showing much interest in some sort of negotiated deal, and any deal that they would potentially agree to is extremely disadvantageous to Trump and the United States and would be a public humiliation requiring Trump to back down with a really, really bad deal. So Trump is in a terrible spot and he has no idea how to get himself out of this. What does this mean then going forward? One, I don't think we should expect this to be resolved anytime soon, which means the problems just keep accruing for the global economy, but also for Trump himself. The problem is it also hurts Europe in particular. Europe will likely face, the major economies of Europe will likely face a recession now this year. Plus, politically, they will continue to be blamed by Trump as Trump can't extricate himself from the situation and shifts the blame to the NATO partners that he sees as unsupportive in this war of choice in Iran. The problem is all of this threatens Ukraine to a degree. Ukraine is a bit protected, fortunately, because we have the 90 billion euro loan. But how much more supportive can Western governments be, say, in the next year to 2 years with this pressure coming from there, plus the potential for sort of NATO to break up and U.S. to really stop even selling weapons, potentially, to Ukraine. In terms of China, it's also important to note, this does actually bind China and Russia even closer. Now that Iran has broken the taboo and closed the Strait of Hormuz, something which people were afraid that Iran would do, but hope they would never do. This now makes the imports of oil from the Middle East to China that much more insecure permanently. They can get much more secure deliveries from Russia going forward. The problem there is that means that the Chinese regime, and they've already said in the last couple of months, that they're more interested in procuring more oil and gas from Russia for the long term because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So that's a significant problem because that makes Beijing deeply invested in the stability of Putin's regime then for the longer term, now that they're even more energy dependent. Related to the U.S. then, I do believe that this is, after 10 years of Trump really getting away with all sorts of crimes, this is the end of Trump. He has betrayed nearly all of his primary core campaign promises. Inflation is going to be reaching 5, 6, 7% this summer for the United States, which he promised to bring down, and it's going to be up very high right in advance of November midterm elections. So we should expect a strong defeat for the Republicans. And also threats to the U.S. stock market, T-bonds, dollar dominance. All of these things are now on the table as major questions here in the coming months and years down the line, what has happened with Iran. So the other major question is Trump would be under a lot of pressure with all of this, and the concern with Democrats taking the House and the Senate that the first thing they do come next year is to try to impeach Trump for any number of potential crimes that he has committed. So what would Trump do and the U.S. empire more broadly in retaliation going forward in the coming months in this very sort of hostile international environment that Trump has helped set up? So that's problematic. More positively, moving to Ukraine. Ukraine has proven itself, as discussed earlier, has proven itself to be the defense hub of the Western world and beyond. This was shown very clearly. This is Zelensky getting off the plane in Saudi Arabia. And very interestingly, just 1 week prior to that, Trump telling MBS to kiss his ass. So you can see, quite literally, I mean, again, historic moments within a week of each other. The United States, the previous, obviously, security guarantor of the international order, being supplanted, at least in the Middle East, by the defense capabilities and leadership of Ukraine, of all countries. Quite a shocking turn of events if you were to say something like this happened, say, 10 years ago. I won't get into these details here, but this is stuff Vlad will be discussing, of course. How Ukraine has made itself this drone superpower and all the advancements, UGVs, USVs, advancements in EW, AI integration, Swarmer, all of these things which have been headlines. Joint ventures, as mentioned at the beginning here. I'll let Vlad get more into that, but really earth-changing stuff in the international defense order. And it's also worth mentioning, politically, Ukraine really, when again, talking about in this more historical context, Ukraine taking a political leadership role as we're moving into this new era. Ukraine getting a head start really on this next era. One of the major problems in the Western world, the United States and in Europe, is that we've forgotten the actual trauma of what war means, to be invaded, to be occupied. That experience, we only know that through our grandparents, our great-grandparents. And that's why we still see European and American populations really sleeping through this war in Ukraine and have lost so much awareness of what's going on here and the importance of what's going on here to the Western security order. The thing is, war is back, and more wars are going to be coming here in the coming years. Ukraine is well placed now to be sort of in that leadership role of the Western world and even parts of the non-Western world, given that context. It's also important to note we have a lot younger leadership, right? People kind of have forgotten the demographics here. If you look at Zelensky, you look at the Prime Minister, Sviridенko, you look at other members of the Zelensky administration, the Minister of Strategic Industries, Fedorov, in his mid-30s. All these guys are young, 30, 40-some years old, and they're promoted and proven by their competence. Not because they're loyal, not because they were necessarily corrupt or anything, but by their competence. That's how they got to their positions. Compare that to, for example, the United States. The average age in the U.S. Senate is 65 years old. The presidents of the United States, going back to the end of the Cold War, Clinton, George W. Bush, Donald Trump, they were all born within 3 months of each other in 1946. Joe Biden, even older, born in 1943. These are people who have not been through the crucible, the tests that Ukraine and the political leadership have been through, and they're far older and frankly out of touch with modern times in many ways. Compare that to the adversaries as well. Look at Russian leadership, all in their 70s. Putin, Naryshkin, Bortnikov, Patrushev, Gerasimov, on down the line. They're all in their 70s. Similar with China. And they're not promoted because of their talent, right? They're there because they were loyal and they're corrupt and they're in the right circles. So again, when you look at allies and adversaries, Ukraine is in a very strong position when you think about political leadership for the next generation. Very positive for Ukraine. So political pressures, though, within Russia. So again, looking at on the Russian side of things here, political pressures are picking up, and they've been consistently picking up. Every webinar we've done here, every event that we've been holding for the last year, we just keep seeing increased pressure on Putin and the Kremlin. And the critical part here, Putin was never going to be tossed out of power because of body bags or because of some failures, some weakness in the war, so anything, or even a weak economy, frankly. It's because he's going to look weak, because he looks vulnerable. When he does things like the bans on Telegram and the VPNs, they've done a gas export ban because of all the Ukrainian long strikes on Russian energy facilities. The very high interest rates that have been high now for several years and will stay double digits deep into next year as well. This is a sign of weakness. Putin is not in control, and he's sending that message very clearly to his population, even to the point that just last week, the head of the Communist Party, long time, of course, part of the sort of managed opposition by Putin and the Kremlin, Gennady Zyuganov, called Q1 publicly in the Duma, called Q1 a complete disaster, as it was, with the economy falling by probably around 2% roughly. The budget has been saved, though. The war in Ukraine is highly beneficial, of course, to Russia, driving up commodity prices. But it's important to note, this does help save the budget. Budget deficit was under extreme pressure in Q1. Saves the budget, helps defense spending, helps defense recruitment, paying soldiers, but it does not fundamentally save the economy. The economic distortions, the extreme labor market problems, which the central banker just brought up again in her conference this past month. These things don't improve just because commodity prices are higher. So you still have this extreme problem within the domestic civilian economy. Here are the stats, and it's quite clear. 22 of 28 economic sectors continued to decline in Q1 of this year. Business surveys, worst sentiment since the start of the war. Moscow Higher School of Economics, in fact, released their business sentiment survey, which then the government forced them to retract. And their survey said this is the worst business sentiment since Putin has been in office in 26 years. Obviously, highly problematic what's happening here within the Russian economy. Lending is rising quite dangerously to the point that the think tank associated with the Minister of Defense, Andrei Belousov, was publicly warning of a banking crisis come Q3 this year. So quite imminent, in fact, because of the problems. On the battlefield, manpower, major issues that are developing. Ever since September, Russia has been losing consistently 5,000 to 10,000 more men than they're able to recruit. This is causing Russia to lack strategic reserves to keep up the pressure on the front. We should expect that to have pretty significant impacts later this year, in the second half of this year, going forward. And then this is probably the most important thing, frankly, in months that has happened within Russia, and what I'm really watching closely, and I would advise you to watch as well, is how Putin relates to these technocrats. You can see here, he dressed them down and criticized them for the poor economic performance of this year. Prime Minister Mishustin next to Putin, closer to us here at the end of the table, Finance Minister Sulyanov and Central Banker Nabulina. These guys are worth 1 million soldiers. These guys are the reason why the Russian economy didn't collapse under all the sanctions pressure and why everything has been able to continue and keep Russia afloat for over 4 years now. If Putin starts attacking them, which would be lovely to see, if he's dumb enough to do that, this is exactly how you can cause a macroeconomic collapse within Russia, which would then lead to Russia's defeat in the war. So what would Putin do with that? Would he perhaps do major cuts in interest rates and cause rapidly rising inflation? There's discussion of confiscating bank deposits, and then of course the potential for mobilization, which would be politically extremely dangerous for Putin to do, plus extremely expensive. These are things to be watching out for, because he's put himself in such a poor spot. Very briefly, just to update on our scenarios, as we've shown consistently. Again, we've risen the likelihood of scenario 2 almost exclusively because of the 90 billion euro loan finally coming through, which builds a lot of confidence for a very positive outlook for Ukraine in this war. So that was a thing to watch. It happened, and now we should be quite hopeful for how things develop. Very briefly, just 2 minutes, I'll go through the latest trends. Unfortunately, and we're hearing a lot of weakness in the investment and business community, investor and business community here in Ukraine. We have revised down our forecasts, and similar to most analytical houses out there, only about 1% growth roughly this year. Exports in particular are becoming quite a problem, related particularly to the southern ports, Russia's attacks on the southern ports and port infrastructure. The currency, fortunately, is protected a bit by dollar weakness, but in either case, there are some minimal macroeconomic problems that are burgeoning, but fortunately the 90 billion euro loan is coming through, which is going to help out, of course, dramatically. Unfortunately, we shouldn't expect a ceasefire this year, so that will hold back and restrain the potential for the economy this year. So we're moving into a stagnation phase here. So about businesses, moods here, sentiment. Business sentiment was, and I heard this repeatedly, at its worst point that executives had ever seen back in January, February, March. Moods have picked up, and that's very positive, but only to an extent, because you're now moving into a somewhat stagnating economy. More positively, though, what's very good to see is that we're not seeing firings. We're not seeing people being laid off. And we're actually seeing companies with the resources to maintain their staff or even increase their staffing minimally, which has been the pattern really for the last couple of years. So that continues this year, which is very positive to see. A little bit more worrying, though, is that about 33% of companies are now stopping their expansion plans or even discontinuing services this year, which is a bit higher, unfortunately, compared to a year ago. Nothing too alarming yet, but a pattern that's unfortunate and hopefully doesn't worsen going forward. And then in terms of the need, the sense of urgency to be investing. These are polling results that were taken here in March and April. You can see, again, moving in the wrong direction. So a little bit less sense of urgency. But again, most companies still feel a sense of urgency to move ahead in the market in order to beat the competition. So it's better it hasn't reversed, but we're still seeing, unfortunately, less appetite for investment. And then in terms of the little quotes from people, morale, I'm focusing on here because that has become really a prime topic, is how do you keep people engaged by the work, keep them motivated, right? Keep them optimistic. And this has become a problem. People, as one general manager said, people have lost their internal fire. They're still going, they're still resilient, still strong, but they've lost that internal fire to really drive the business. And then in terms of performance, with the stagnating economy, and it's been stagnating really since last summer, no real clear sense of growth drivers. This, unfortunately, is becoming a problem for a number of companies this year, which if they aren't able to increase their revenues, they may not be profitable, and that becomes problematic for sustaining the business. It's not a major alarm yet, but I'm hearing that more and more from the business community, so that's a little bit concerning. And then lastly, as expected, the polling that we did the last 2 months, huge decline in expectations for a ceasefire this year. So while in Q4 of last year, slight majority of people expected a ceasefire this year, now it's an extreme minority. So about 80% of people are not expecting a ceasefire or peace deal in 2026 due to fairly obvious reasons. And then similarly, when we asked a willingness for a land for peace deal, effectively, there was a willingness to do that, slight majority, again, back in Q4 of 2025. And then moving into this year, that has changed quite significantly, where there's less willingness to do this. Again, this has more to do with the fact that people don't trust security guarantees from the United States or from Europe, for that matter. So unfortunately, that really has reduced the likelihood, or of this year at least, of reaching a land for peace deal with Russia. And then lastly, for those of you in town in Kyiv, please do attend our June 11th event. So with that, thank you. Sorry for the instability in the internet connection, but I hope enough of that was understandable. Happy to take questions, of course, but moving on, I will hand over the microphone to Anders of Brightbird. Anders?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm the security advisor at Brightbird. Sorry, I can hear my son makes trouble.
Okay, we hear you. We can't hear you now.
Coming into the beginning of the year.
Good, keep going.
Is everybody muted?
Yes, go ahead.
Anders,
Okay.
you're echoing. I got rid of my headphones and it seems like it's better.
Okay. Status update on the front line as of Q1 is that there is a continued heavy fighting in the Luhansk Donetsk areas. Primary infected areas is Kupiansk and Lysyansk in Donetsk, with still fighting going on in Pokrovsk, but without any real progress being made on both sides. Both the Russian side and Ukrainian side have made smaller land grabs, but nothing significant as of now. The Ukrainian forces have exploited the breakdown in communication on the Russian side following the disconnection from Starlink, which made it possible to gain some ground in February and March.
There's
But
an echo
otherwise, we haven't seen
Anders.
any
Sorry to
major
interrupt, but
phenomena.
we're hearing an echo. If yeah.
Yes,
Okay, try to
everybody else
continue
than
now.
me muted. Can we hear now?
Oh, perfect.
Seem to work. Okay. A note that we have seen on the front line, which actually has spilled a little bit into this southern part of Mykolaiv Oblast as well, is the use of leaflets mine or mini mines, which are small mines dropped from UAVs along the front line, packed with explosive 5 to 10 grams, enough to do injury, but not to kill, sort of say. And it is a bit troubling that these kind of mines have been found in the southernmost part of the Mykolaiv Oblast, due to the use of FPV drones from Crimea over. So that is definitely something that we are keeping an eye on, seeing if that sort of trend is evolving and expanding further away from the front line. Coming into the spring, we have a shift from the winter offensive, or what you can call into the spring offensive. We have seen a reduction in attacks on power plants, but increased attacks on energy infrastructure, and especially from the Ukrainian government side, a lot of notes being made about Russian intent to attack utility, water supplies, dams, and so on. So that's definitely also a possibility to disrupt the civilian population even more than they have done, and bring terror, a way to bring terror into the civilian population. Q1 brought an increase in railway and logistical hub attacks, depots, junction, and particular the depots carrying the locomotive, not the carriage per se, which had led to the implementation of evacuations of trains all over Ukraine as soon as drones get within a certain radius of a train. They're going to stop and evacuate personnel, and that have been reported on almost can say all major train lines. This is made in an attempt to save human lives, and you can say from the Russian side, it's a part of their disruption strategy and trying to force logistics for the front line to halt or into a slower pace, and force logistic transport more onto roadworks. We have seen an increase in attack again on the ports in Odessa, similar to the ones we had in the fall of 2025, which we assess will continue straight into the summer again, to try and kind of limit the possibility of grain export for Ukraine and import of logistics, military logistics, and so on. During Q1, we have seen a shift in aerial attacks from, what can you say, nationwide attacks into more centralized urban kind of attacks, trying to terrorize civilian population, coming in over more populated area. We have seen a small increase in civilian casualties and wounded, which is a troubling image. We have also seen an increase in targeting towards the air defense systems, which can partly be said is due to the rise of daytime attacks. So previously, most attacks started around 11 p.m. Now we have seen attacks starting all around 8, 10 a.m., continuing all over the day, expanding almost up to 24 hours, and being compiled of up to nearly 1,000 UAVs and 60 plus missiles. And this is done in an attempt to kind of overload the Ukrainian air defenses and try to target vulnerable areas more. Due to this, the southern flight path, mainly going over Mykolaiv district, have seen an increase in alarms, not an increase in attacks, but you have seen larger swarms of drones coming in through the south, continuing up into the country, mainly towards the Kiev, Ivano-Frankivsk, or Lviv areas. Otherwise, during Q1, of taking special note of is the 4, what can you say, IED targeted incidents towards first responders. Mainly the one in Lviv, where you had the first explosion going off, drawing in first responders, second explosion going on, wounding and killing one police officer. Previously, first responders have all been targeted, but that have mainly been in, what can you say, kind of the frontline areas, cities. So we know that there is a few attempts that have been foiled by Ukrainian intelligence. Likewise, due to the increased mobilization by the Ukrainian forces, we have seen a few knife attacks, directed attacks towards the TTC mobile enforcement teams and the police supporting them. This is not, what can you say, a thing that we see growing, expanding, getting bigger, but it's definitely as people get more desperate trying to avoid the draft or avoid participating, it is a risk that will or can increase further on. So that was in general, overall, a little bit about the security update for Q1. Thank you.
Thank you, Anders. Mark?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Hopefully there isn't an echo, but at this point, then thank you for that, and let's turn it over here to Vlad Konov, the head of Unmanned Systems at JDI Integration. Vlad, you're welcome to take the stage here. Vlad will be discussing the most recent drone battlefield data, also the Russian side of things, Russia's their most dangerous drones and advancements they've made, including in electronic warfare, aside from the drones. And then also discussing issues related to developments in AI and future of UAV autonomy. So, Vlad, with that, turn it over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mark. Hello, Andrew. I can hear myself, so please mute.
So you echo.
Yeah, I think. Now I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, let's do that. Then I can share my presentation, I guess, right?
Yes, you should be able to. Let me unshare here, and then you should be able to share. Andrew, unless he has to give.
Yeah. Oh, he's good.
There you go.
Great, guys. Thank you for your intro. Sorry, Mark, can you? Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you for a short intro again. I'm here from Unmanned Systems and JDI. We are the integrator company, military integrator company, and we see a lot of trends all over us because it is our business, and we had a lot of R&D based on the unmanned systems all over, and some inputs and outcomes I want to just share with you. So again, we are speaking about the war machine, right? Because it's not only about the technology, it's about the economy, and we should think mathematically what is the data and which data is causing the increase or decrease of the economy and overall the battlefield, right? And just a few words about me. I have a lot of experience in the robotics. Before the war, I had one of the biggest R&D for robotics in Ukraine. We deployed almost 40 different robots. I was one of the guys who created the autonomous tanks in Ukraine. So we had a lot of experience previously, but now we are focusing more and more for technological race with Russia, and I think it's good and bad because people are dying, but good for technologies because technologies are increasing, and we see the economical impacts of that. So I based my information on my professional network and the network of JDI Integration. So there are more than 100 professionals globally that we have a network when sharing the information about the active battlefield. And so let's go to the numbers, and we have a Russian-Ukrainian war here with the numbers of lost, right, together. So almost 2 million soldiers are killed, wounded, or missing. So we have almost 6 million drones that were used on the active battlefield. So we have a number 1 to 3, right? So three drones for one soldier. Though this is the statistics right now, and more than 120k Shahed types of drones was launched by Russia. By today, it's tremendous amount of drones that we used in our active battlefield. 7,000 tanks destroyed, and 5,000 artillery systems was destroyed in Ukraine by that time. And with these statistics, we can see that 60% of tanks was destroyed by the FPV drones, and 40% soldiers killed by FPV drones or wounded with the FPV drones. But this number is rising, and we're going back to the unmanned systems. So the main problem is the scaling right now for the old technologies for unmanned systems, because we're solving the problem of scaling because each of us now have different drones and technology but we don't have enough operators to control them. So this is the issue. And going back to the data from Interfax and Militarny, we are now good on the manufacturing side of drones. So we have a lot of local manufacturers, and you see that in 2022 we just manufactured 1,200 drones, and now 2026 we have more than 7 million manufactured in Ukraine. So Ukraine is getting bigger and bigger in terms of technology. And thank you, Mark, to mention that. In reality, yes, Ukraine is the hub for military right now, and it's really good to invest to it and to work with it, and just to share the information, to collect the data, and so on. And again, the main outcome. So we have big weapons, big toys, how I call it, and they are not efficient anymore in terms of economy. And it doesn't matter if it's Russian tank destroyed or German Leopard 2 destroyed. It's the same target for FPV drone. You just need to have the terminal guideline to hit it, to strike it. And now I want to just a little bit open the main game changers in technology, so you can understand more where we're going and why all the development process is dependent on some game changers. Okay, first of all, I pretty much remember the first time that I heard the sound of Shahed just above my head in Kiev, 2022. So that was something unique and updated technology for Ukrainian army that we never handled, right? And it was a real big problems for infrastructure and for military brigades to handle those. And for now, Shahed, I think, or Geran 2, each kind of Russian branding of it, it's just the main threat overall in all the world, I guess. It's threat for South Korea, for Arabic countries, because this is really efficient and really cheap weapon. Another game changer that you maybe notice, which is the kamikaze drones or FPV drones that actively using Ukraine right now, and this is the game changer of getting from the big weapon and the tanks to the small brigades with the FPVs that can have 25 kilometers of the dead zone. So what is the dead zone? It's like when the front side, the battlefield just staying on one place and you cannot move back and forward with the soldiers on it, right? With the tanks or any heavy weapons, because everything that go to that zone is just destroyed immediately, right? With those guys, they are super cheap. You see the price for $700, controlled by Link, like Chinese Express LRS and all this stuff. And you see that 10% of the drones that we are actively using right now in the statistics are on fiber optic. And another good insight from my side, sorry for that. It's we having lower and lower crossfire technology, which is kind of more advanced military level, but because of the licensing and the cost of the crossfire protocols and the modules, it's getting much pricey for Ukrainian brigades to buy that. So they just read out of it and is using the Express LRS. And again, another threats, and this is my actually goal, what I want to solve. If we're talking about the manufacturer, we're still dependent on 80% of Chinese bomb bill of materials there. So it's really bad for any kind of economy to be that dependent. And it's not only about Ukraine, Europe, US, like all countries, they dependent on Chinese bill of materials, especially crystals, the SMD components, SMD boards. We want to change that game. And for now, I think South Korea could be the good player. I just recently have really good conversation with them about transferring the technology to US and Ukraine to substitute the Chinese bill of materials, which is, I think, it's really important. And new reality, right? If you can see my screen and you can zoom in a little bit, you can see that these cables and wires, and this is not actually the cables, it's optic, right? So it's optic cable, right? But it's really thin cable from the FPV drones, and it's like a net, like spider net, all over the cities. And again, new reality is about the cutting edge technology that you need to utilize, right? You need to build your business to maybe someone like in near future, in a couple of years, will build a startup to reduce that pollution of the cable, right? And it's going to be a new business and maybe smart idea to do that. Demining, decabling. This is really high potential, I think, businesses after the war for Ukrainian recovery. And another game changer that I want to mention here it is the EW, electronic warfare systems. So we had Shaheds previously, right? We create the anti-drone systems for them. Also, after the FPV drones became a dominant technology on the battlefield, a lot of companies start to do the anti-drone systems, which is EW, right? So Silok, one of the Russian number one right now on the active battlefield. It's not that pricey again, only to $200K. And it has a lot of opportunities, and honestly, it's good system in terms of technology. And this is kind of new step to move forward and to the technology that I want to describe and that I'm focusing on, right? We have drones, and that we cannot scale because of we cannot have 8 million operators, right? We need to have the system that you can multi-control or automate. Also, another threat is we have EW systems that are commonly getting to Ukraine, and we need to be against them. So again, those EW systems, they are focusing more on cutting the channel and the connection between the FPV pilot and the drone itself. So now we have that threat, and we're solving that problem with another technology that developed from there on the basement of that problems. Another variation of tactical EW system, which is much cheaper, like you see here. Tactical level deployed on the cars. Shtora K, actively used in Ukraine, cheap, good technology. Again, this is the game changer too for FPV drones. Yes, and going back to the military hub, we have more than 150 plus manufacturers right now, and Brave is actively collecting the the forms and requests from international companies to test in Ukraine and develop in Ukraine, which is a really good sign. The next step, which I think is great, to open the export offices all over the Europe, and I hope by the end of the day we can open the export office in the US for sure, to have our partnership more closer. And it's more than 3,000 projects right now in Ukraine that supported with sponsored with the grants, sponsored with the Brave One, different VC companies. So booming, right? And also we have almost 150 foreign companies that testing, co-developing in Ukraine, and JDI one of them for now. And we're going back to our problem again. You can see a lot of interfaces, a lot of platforms all over the active battlefield. We have fixed wings, different sizes of FPVs. We have anti-jamming systems, different mission planners. I mean, this is all the screens that one particular operator should have to operate 10 drones, right? So this is not scalable again. This is the problem. So all the world moving to the swarming methodology. And again, I think this is another game changer for Russian-Ukrainian war. And I think this is the technology that can move us closer to the end of the war, because it just no sense to have a war anymore if you have this autonomous, really edge technology that you are just not ready to. This is really efficient economy by economy. By counting the numbers, you can really understand that it's just no reason to have the war in this case, right? But everyone knows Putin and how he's feeling about the war, and he's just different person. But again, yeah, I think this kind of technology could change everything on the active battlefield. And this is why, first of all, we have next generation threat. So we can program the drone fly anywhere in the world, strike everyone we want. And this is kind of really crazy. Sounds crazy, right? The weapon that can track, that can strike anyone in the world. So this is kind of next generation threat. And if you make those drones in the swarm, is getting much more bigger problem. Again, the autonomous targeting is another threat and impact. We should understand which drone from the red team and which drone from the blue team. And it's not that obvious in the active battlefield for sure. And again, each country that has the technology of swarming has the opportunity to just launch them anywhere they want. So we need to have the system of crypto tracking, and we need to have systems like a Delta attack, US attack to track friendly drones, right? Again, about the scalability, we need to have the ecosystem platform. So it's not only about one drone, it's about the ecosystem, which is include the fixed wings, the UGVs, which is the ground vehicles, the EW, electronic warfare with the detector. So this ecosystem is the scalable product that could cover the city, for example, Kiev or New York. So this is the new trend of technology. And again, from the insights we're talking about the hardware, we're talking about the FPV platforms, UGV platforms, so on, but the real gold on this active battlefield is the data. Everyone tried to chase the data to train the ML and AI platforms they have for object detection, for last mile strikes, for ISR missions. So this is the rapid adaptation with your algorithms, because you can just work remotely from anywhere in the world to operate your swarm and to teach it how to be more efficient. And this is the last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. This is my contact information if someone just have questions that I don't have time today for, but really open for your questions and open to connect with the LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Hey, Vlad, thank you. I think that one of the questions is a practical question, because you're not just involved in the drone technology, but also familiar with electronic warfare systems. So the question is, we usually receive or usually get from investors, and we personally working on energy production facilities in Ukraine. Okay, we're speaking with lots of investors who are willing to invest, for example, in wind power plants, in wind turbines, and all these projects are actually developing pretty quickly in Ukraine. But the main the main issue here is the security, right? And as we've seen, I believe in Kherson region, one of the wind turbines was targeted by the drone. So, and we as a team and with some other partners are talking about how to protect those turbines, on how to protect those um, solar power plants or battery energy storage systems in Ukraine. So, what your recommendation would be? Because what we discussing is how to install electronic warfare equipment in those facilities in order to jam the drones. Or what would be your advice? Because it's not just about energy production facilities. We have different types of production facilities in Ukraine that need to be secured. So, what's your view on that? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Andrew. Again, I think the solution is multi-layer. You cannot protect something with just one technology. This is just useless of your time. Again, remember, we have the business, that the security business, anti-thief business, that protect your stuff in your warehouse facility, right? So this is the kind of company that just arrive to your place and provide you with the security services. I think the future going to be the same for unmanned systems and for anti-drone systems. So it will be the military organization or the company just gonna cover all the multi-layer protection for you on different capabilities. You can go a little bit under the ground to protect something that you can protect, not the wind turbine for sure, but some facility or warehouse, for example. You can have the interceptor drones. You can have the detectors, long-range detectors to detect the target. You can have the even noise detector, like we often use in Ukraine for shaheds, to detect the noise of shahed from the 100 kilometers away. I mean, it's a really complex multi-layer system that should be regulated for sure and implement with the government programs or with the private businesses, big private businesses. And I think it's really, really important opportunity for everything, for airports, for plants, for buildings, for cities. I mean, you can cover all entire city with that kind of multi-layer system. And this is what we are building. We're building the ecosystem to integrate more and more capabilities to it, to have cross-functional stuff. So this is our vision, to have you, to provide you the interface that you can just execute the mission of protect your facility, and that's it. I mean, this is the future.
Great, thanks a lot, guys. Anyone has questions? Okay. All right, I believe we're good. Thank you a lot. Thank you, everyone who participated. And Anders, thank you. Also, please don't forget that we have event on June 11th. We do not announce, we don't make any announcements, but UBN and Imperials Bank are having a private gala dinner event in London on May 21st, and this event is only for premium members. So we contact everyone personally. Also, again, on June 11th is going to be a big event on the road to URC 2026, and we're going to do this event like we did the last year in collaboration with US-Ukraine Business Council. That's going to be a huge event. So please, if you're planning to travel to Ukraine, let us know in advance. We will be happy to have you over. Okay, thanks everyone, and be safe, and we will see you next time.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.